everyone. I'm Michael B. Ross with High Performance, an HBK company, and I'm so glad you joined me for the webinar today. We're going to talk about 3 ways to improve your culture in 2022. Culture is one of the most Googled and researched business terms in the world. We all know how important it is to build a strong and powerful culture. Oftentimes, business leaders who I've spoken to feel like they're at a loss for the practical ways to build a culture. It feels at times that culture is a bit esoteric. Like you can see it, you can feel it, you can somewhat understand it, but it feels kind of hard to grasp. Oftentimes, it can feel like you're trying to get a cloud captured in a fishing net. You feel like you got something, then you look and it's empty. But today I wanted to talk to you about the practical ways we can improve our culture in 2022. So first of all, what is culture? Culture, quite simply, is just your way of life. It's just your way of living. It's the way that you live, move, and have your being. It is the way that we connect with one another. It involves our products, our services, our behaviors, our norms, our standards, our values. And so we must be intentional about building our cultures in a way that is going to produce the greatest results and outcomes. Getting results is the name of the game for our businesses. We all want to see at the end of 2022 better results than we saw in 2021. But how we get results really matters for the sustainability of growth in our cultures. So if we were to just change a few systematic behaviors in our organization, for example, in sales and marketing, if we get on some campaigns where we're reaching out to our target audiences and we do it consistently over a period of time, we expend a lot of energy breaking into new markets and new fields, and we garner new business. At the end of the year, if we do it right, the assumption is we'd have better results. But the question is, what are we doing to get those results? And is that sustainable? By being intentional with our cultures and making sure that we're building sustainable behaviors from the ground up, we can then presume with the law of predictability that not just 2022, but 23, 24, 25, we will consistently live new actions and behaviors because it's going to be a part of our subconscious streaming habits. And so what I want to do today is I want to give you 3 basic things that you can do in 2022, not only to create better results and better systematic behaviors to create better results in 2022, but I want to take that foundation you built in 2022 and give you a way to sustain it over the long haul. So let's get into the 3 ways that you can improve your culture in 2022. So the first one is you got to take the gut check assessment. You got to do a gut check evaluation of your culture. Something to remember is that emotion is the language of our body, where logic is the language of our minds. We experience things with emotion, and then we evaluate with our minds. And so in order to change behavior, we have to remember that it is our bodies that are actually taking the steps and the actions to make behavior better, where it is the mind that is directing the body and what to do. Now, something that is very important in physiological, psychological, and sociological sciences is this. In order to change behavior, we have to take the emotions that we're used to living, so emotions that are based upon the past oftentimes, or emotions we're currently living in the present, and we have to feed an elevated emotion. So what that means is if I want to change, let's say, my physical body, and I'm used to eating certain types of food, let's say I'm limited in my exercise, and I know that I have to eat better foods, and I have to increase my amount of exercise, although my mind is telling me, oh my gosh, logically, that's gonna be a lot of work. That's going to be hard to do. But if I were to picture in my mind and allow the emotions to settle in of what my life is going to look like when I increase my amount of activity, my exercise, and I were to eat better, what results that's going to create for me, then I will be more emotionally inclined to take the actions necessary to lean into the pain of change. Now, if I just feed logic and don't add the emotional element to it, which is the vision of the future of the results that I'm going to create, then my body is going to be more inclined to go back to the systematic habits of the past where I am comfortable. So remember, in order to change, we have to have an elevated emotion that appeals to the body and also to the logic. So the reason why evaluation is so important is because it puts us in a position to really be clear about the emotions that we are inclined to in our culture. And it also gives us the ability to say, okay, I don't like these emotions. I don't like the things that are happening in my culture right now. And it gives me the ability to dream what it would be like if the actions were different, so that we can lean into the pain of change and we can create better cultures that are more sustainable. Remember, emotion is the language of the body, logic is the language of the mind. If you're just leading with logic and without emotion, the chances of you changing anything are slim to none. So when we start with these evaluations, it is important that if you are on the wrong side of any one of these questions that we'll cover, that you allow the pain and the emotion of that to filter through your body. And then we'll look at logically how we can systematically change that and dream of a better future where we're more emotionally inclined to change. So here's some of the questions that you want to cover. And it's real simple. You know, intuition is a major part of leadership, and you know which side of the equation you're on. And it's important that you're very honest with yourself as you evaluate. So here's the first question that you've got to ask. Do I feel a sense of unity in my culture? Do I feel like people are working together? Do I feel like people are selfless and willing to sacrifice their own personal gain for the betterment of the team? Knowing that if I sacrifice for the betterment of the team, it's also going to benefit me personally. Do I feel that sense of unity in my organization? And it really is a simple yes or no. And go with your gut here. Go with what your emotion is telling you. It's either yes or no. But do I feel a sense of unity in my organization? Yes or no? The second question is this: does everyone at my organization know our vision and the goals that go with that vision? My recommendation to everyone is you got to have every year for 2022, for example, you've got to have a clear vision of what you want to create in 2022. What are the results? How does it affect my team? How does it affect my clients? How does it affect the world around me? The things that we create in 2022, how is it going to affect the people in and outside of our organization? Does everyone at your organization know that? And do they know the goals and the milestones we have to reach in order to reach that vision? According to statistics, 71% of people do not know the vision and goals in their organization. So ask yourself, which side of the equation are you on? Is it yes or is it no? And if you are intentional about your vision and your goals, you'll know it. And if you're not, you'll also know that. So it's important to ask yourself that question. The next one is this: are the people in your organization working for the same purpose? The greatest purpose of mankind is to help other human beings' lives improve and get better. Your organization, my organization, and every organization of any kind of moral standing exists to improve the quality of life for their clients. Are your people intentional about improving the quality of life for your clients? Again, this is either a yes or a no. And it's important that you know whether or not that is true. And it's important to your culture to know whether or not that is true. The next question is this: do people in your organization follow and live the same values? This is something we're going to talk about a little bit later in the webinar, but do you have a systematic set of values that you follow, that you talk about, that you discuss, that guide your behaviors and your actions and your thinking? And the answer is either yes or no. And the other question that we could add to that is, how do you know for sure? Are you checking up with your team? Are you having conversations with your team about your values and making sure you continue to get better and better and improve how you live those values? And then next, is vital information carefully communicated at your organization? Communication is the number one issue when it comes to building a powerful culture. It's the number one problem in every organization. Communication breakdowns cost companies an average of 2.5 hours of lack of production time because of poor or mixed messages. So we've got to make sure that we're carefully communicating vital information in our organizations. And again, this is either a yes or no. You're on one side of the equation or the other. And this isn't to shame, guilt, or judge any of you. It's not at all. This is a way for us to get clear about where we're at and, again, be emotionally tied to this so that we'll see the need to see a better future for ourselves and give us the emotion to lean into the pain of change. So is vital information carefully communicated at your organization? The next one is, do employees tell you when and why morale is down? So if people are struggling, if they're nearing burnout, if there's some maybe conflict in the organization, are your employees coming to you and having an open forum, real talk kind of conversation with you? Are they able to share that with you? Is this happening frequently to where they can say, hey, we're noticing some things are off and we need to get it right? It's important that you know whether or not that is happening, because we don't want what's called underlying assumptions or water cooler talk to rule our culture. And if people aren't open and willing to share with you, the leader, of when and why morale is down, the chances are underlying assumptions are affecting your culture. So we've got to have a real open forum and open conversation about those things. Next is, do your employees come to work ready and engaged? That word engagement is kind of this broad, superfluous conference word that is tossed around constantly. But engagement just simply means that people care. That they come to the organization, they care about what they're doing, they care about their teammates, they care about the purpose of the organization, they care that they are careful and not careless about the work that they are doing. And if you were to evaluate your team and you were to say, how many people really come in ready and engaged to do their job, to care for our clients, to care for their teammates, to care about what they're doing, what would you say? Yes or no? Is it yes on a broad scale? Is it yes on a small scale? Is it 50-50? So just say yes or no to that. And then next, do people properly handle conflict at your organization? Now, one thing we all know is wherever there's people and wherever there's communication, there's bound to be conflict. And conflict's not a bad thing. Conflict can actually help us to get to the root of some of our systems issues within our organizations. And it gives us a chance to have an open forum where we can improve the systems. Now remember this, systems run businesses and people run systems. So typically where there's conflict, there's usually a systems problem. But what happens in many organizations that aren't clear about their systems, or they're not clear about conflict and how important it is that we have it at times to improve our systems, is people start to look at people the wrong way. So instead of blaming a system issue, they'll blame a person and assume negative intent versus assuming positive intent, that people are coming to work to try to do a great job, to try to help perpetuate our purpose and our values and our vision. Instead, they blame the people for when things go wrong and they don't look at the systems. And so we never get to the root of it. And oftentimes, too, people are afraid of conflict because they simply don't have the skills on how to engage conflict. So you got to ask yourself that too as a follow-up. Do people have the proper skills to engage conflict? And the answer could be yes or no, but do people in your organization handle conflict properly? That's what you see in healthy cultures, is people are able to engage conflict, and they do so willingly, knowing that the conflict is usually a systems problem. And then finally, are expectations clearly defined and communicated to each team member in your organization? People don't get what they want. Our organization, we don't get what we want. We get what our standards are. We get what we're willing to settle for. And oftentimes, having consulted in leadership and culture for over 13 years, oftentimes I hear people saying, I don't know what is expected of me. Yeah, I know my job title. I know somewhat my roles and responsibilities, but I don't know the chief end of what results I'm trying to get, or what my leaders expect of me, because they're never clearly communicated. And I've spoken to many leaders who say that they haven't set clear expectations for their team members. And so you think about that, there's a gap then, there's a chasm between what the leaders want and what the employees do. And what we've got to do is we've got to bridge that gap. And it's simple. We sit down, we set clear expectations, we have measurable results that we can go over and then evaluate and get as much feedback as possible on how to achieve those results as clearly and as quickly as we can. So those are the 8 questions I would ask you to ask yourself every month. Constantly use these questions to evaluate your culture, assess your culture, go with your gut check. I would also recommend you get your leadership team together, even all your employees together, and you ask these questions. And it's not a shame, guilt, or judgment or an indictment on you as a leader if there's no to any of these questions. What we do after we get a no is we engage it. We go, okay, so how do we improve this? What can we do systematically to improve our culture? And everybody should have a say in that. Everybody should have a say in the way that we live our life. And that's what a culture is. It's our way of life. And we want to create a better way of life for better results, for better engagement, for better communication, for better onboarding, for better retention, and all the other benefits that you get from building a powerful culture. So number 1, take the gut check assessment and do it consistently. Number 2 is improve leadership. Now, something to remember about leadership, it's not something you're born with. Leadership is a multidisciplinary skill. Leadership is something that we have to be intentional about improving. Leadership is a combination of decision-making, communication, conflict resolution, vision and goals, work-life balance, personal and professional development, and looking at ways to increase our knowledge, our efficacy, our emotional and socio-emotional well-being and health. So it's a constant flux of different skills that we have to gain, and there's social graces involved. It's being able to get a group of people to work together for the same purpose, for the same vision, towards the same goals. It's being able to adjust on the fly. So leadership is something we never stop improving in. And you've got to be intentional about doing this. You've got to get yourself into positions where you can learn from people, you can grow, go to conferences, go to seminars, go to workshops, read books, get a coach, get someone who can improve, because here's the facts. Leaders create 70% of the variance in the way a culture lives, breathes, and has its being. So leaders create culture, and then the culture affects the employees and the team and the results. So we can't be haphazard, we can't be unintentional. We have to be intentional about improving our skills, improving our efficacy, improving our socio-emotional health and well-being. And here's something I tell leaders all the time. You've got to take really good care of yourself. And I do believe and I do subscribe to the servant leadership model, which is You're always thinking about your team and how to improve the quality of life of your team. And essentially the purpose of leadership is to put your team in the best position to succeed. However, you've got to take really good care of yourself if you're going to have the energy, if you're going to have the skills, and you're going to have the sustainability to help your team and to put them in the best position to succeed. So you got to always improve your leadership skills and take really good care of yourself. So number one, we've got to take the gut check assessment. We've got to do that at least once a month, as I said. Number two, you always have to be improving your leadership skills. It's a multidisciplinary skill. So you've got to always be improving your skill. And number three, you've got to value your values. Now, as kids, we were taught these little mini philosophical instructional statements such as sit up straight, don't put your elbows on the table, look at people in the eyes when they talk to you. You know, don't do anything that is going to cause detriment to your family name. You know, there's all these little things, but if you break them down, you know, those are values. Those are values. So when we say don't put your elbows on the table, it's about honoring other people. It's about honoring yourself. It's about manners, and manners honor other people. It's really important. Also, when we say look people in the eyes, it's about respect, it's about kindness, it's about dignity, it's about honor. So there's these many instructional statements that tie back to values. And values are so important to your culture because it guides the behavior of how we live, we move, and the way we do life. And so the first question is this: do you have clear values that you point people to in order to guide their behavior? An example would be kindness. If you and I started a business together and we said, you know what, we're going to live by a singular value, and that's kindness. And let's say we started 2 branches, and you end up in Los Angeles, California, and I end up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we live by the value of kindness in everything that we do. And we study kindness, we practice kindness, we think about kindness, we discuss kindness, and we think about how it informs the way we do business, and then we live that way. Whether or not we have a client in Los Angeles, California, or Minneapolis, Minnesota, they're going to have the same experience with us. Why? It's because we're intentional about living the value of kindness. And if you were to get a testimonial from a client in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or Los Angeles, California, it's going to be very similar because we're intentional about it. Now, there's 5 things to remember about values that you can never forget, and why they're so important to our culture. Is number 1, values value people. Values value people. When you live, again, the example of kindness, why do you live kindness? It's to put a value on people. Now remember, business is people, and people are business. Without people, business doesn't exist anymore. How do you grow a business? We take care of more people. And the more people you take care of, the more your business grows. The more they buy your goods and your services, and the more your business grows. So if we're intentional with our values, we're actually valuing people and our relationships with them. And so our values value people. The second thing is, values have the greatest market value. Now, you could use any analogy that you want. Now, I'll use a quick one. So there's a pizza shop that is nearby my house that has great pizza, yet they have terrible customer service. You call them on the phone and they're rude. It feels like when you call them, you're interrupting their day. It feels like you're a bother to them. And so because they don't live values, which is about honoring people, it's about respecting people, I don't like calling them. Even though I love their pizza, I oftentimes when someone says, let's get pizza, and they mention that pizza shop, I go, I don't want to call. I don't want to call them. I'd rather go somewhere else where I'm going to get better customer service. And what does that tell you? That pizza shop could have a lot more business if they simply treated people with greater kindness and respect, and they live with values. And so what happens as a result of them not living values? They decrease their market value. They're not doing as much business as they could because they aren't valuing interactions with other human beings. And the opposite is true. You take a franchise like Chick-fil-A, that everything at that organization is built around valuing people, about giving them the greatest experience possible. And people drive far out of their way to go to Chick-fil-A because they value people. When you leave there, you feel better about yourself because they go to painstaking detail to make sure that everything about your experience values you and makes you feel better. The food's not bad either, but it comes down to the fact that their market value has increased because they value people. The third thing you've got to remember is values are our leader. They are all of our leaders. So in leadership, if you started your own business, let me stop here real quick. I started my business thinking, I'm going to be the master of my own domain now. I'm not going to have any bosses. But what I quickly realized was values were my boss. Values of honor, respect, dignity, consideration, kindness, generosity, thoughtfulness. All of those things were my leaders. And I had to live up to that standard if I was going to grow my business at all. So leaders are all of our leaders. And I tell my team this all the time. I say, look, I'm going to fall short. I'm a human being. I make mistakes, and I will fall short of our values sometimes. And I'm going to do my best to live those, but those are our leaders. And if you look to those to lead you, they will never fail you, which is actually the next point but nonetheless, leaders are our values, and values lead us. And a leader's job is to perpetuate the values and to make sure they point to those values that inform our behavior and build our culture. The next point is, as I mentioned, values never fail us. They never fail us. Now, it doesn't mean they always give you the results that you want. You can certainly be kind to somebody and they can be rude back. You could show kindness to a client and they could obviously be rude back, take their business elsewhere. So it may not always give us the results that we want, but values never fail. So when we live values, we always live with peace of mind. We're able to sleep better at night. We're able to feel good in our own skin and know that we're doing everything in our power to live the right way. So values ultimately never fail us, especially when we're living from intrinsic motivation and we're doing everything in our power to make life better for those that we serve and to improve their quality of life. And then finally, the last reason why values are so important is because values are the key to living a fulfilled and impactful life. Values are the key to living a fulfilled and impactful life. If you think about this, we will never be perfect. We will never be able to live without flaws. And the goal is for all of us as we live this life, we live this human experience, is that we become the best version of ourselves. You hear that and it's tossed around a lot. The word is tossed around a lot. But what that simply means is that most of the time we live values and we get the benefits of living those values. Now, I've never heard a person who lives with regret that says that they stuck to their values as often as possible. What you hear is people who live with regret, they say, I compromised my values and therefore I have regret. And in order to have fulfilled and impactful lives, we've got to be people of great moral values and high standards. And by you creating that in your culture, here's the ancillary benefit, and something that I always talk to leaders about, is not only do you create a great culture where people feel safe, they get along with one another, it perpetuates great connection and great continuity, but the values you live at your organization helps people in their personal lives as well. It's holistic, that as they live the values in your organization, they're taking those values home with them and affecting their personal lives. I've had many testimonials of employees of organizations where I've helped them retool their values or create values in their organization who have told me this testimonial, that this has affected my personal life in many, many different ways. So by creating a culture that is guided and intentional about living values, you help people have fulfilled and impactful lives. So the first one is this: you've got to take the gut check assessment. Do it at least once every month. The second is you got to be intentional about improving your leadership. It's a multidisciplinary skill, and you've got to take the time to improve your skills consistently and effectively. And then third is you got to value your values. You got to always point to your values as the guide in the way that we live our lives. Now, I know for many organizations, you think that once things are good, we want to start building our culture. But your culture is being built every day because it is your way of life. Now, remember that it's really hard to change unless you elevate the emotion in your organization. That's true for an individual, that's true for a people group. And if we don't change the emotion in the organization, if we're not intentional about building a better way of life, we're going to do more of the same. No matter what initiative you start, if it's based upon logic and it doesn't have an emotional aspect to it, where you see a better future for yourselves and those in your organization, for your clients, for your families, then people will not lean into the pain of change. Now, if you're struggling with how to implement this in your life, I've got good news for you. For everyone on this webinar today, I am offering a no obligation 30-minute consultation where you can sit down with me and we can discuss your culture and we can discuss your way of life. We can discuss this gut check assessment. We can discuss your leadership skills. We can discuss your values and talk about ways that we can create a better, more systematic culture in your way of life that you'll look back 20 years from now and be very proud of. And you'll also, the benefit of creating a great culture is you get better results. So I'd ask you, after this webinar is over, sign up for your no obligation 30-minute consultation with me or one of my team members. And we'll be more than happy to sit down with you and talk about your culture and your way of life. I hope that the information in this webinar has been beneficial to you. It is my hope and my genuine desire that in everything that you do, you will be intentional so that you can be exceptional and you'll lead your team to a better way of life. Thank you so much for joining me for 3 ways to improve your culture in 2022.